He's a lock to go yard. It's a LeBron night. Rodgers? Don't play him, play him. I'm chasing DJ because I'm not an idiot. This line is on fire.
This is Pre-Lock Live.
Well, we'll find out if it is once again a LeBron night. What's up, boys and girls? Welcome to a special early edition of NBA Pre-Lock Live. Hope you're having a happy hump day. I'm Adam Kaufman with Julian Edlow. Also a newcomer. We got Matt Dagostino from NBA.com with us. Dags, how are you?
Fantastic, guys. How are you?
Can't complain. Actually, it's pretty good for me and you. A couple of Syracuse guys here and just a lonely little roadie Ram.
Good luck with Duke.
Yeah, listen, everything right now is just it's house money. I don't care what happens.
House money?
House money, yeah. The fact that they're there in the first place.
You're talking about going to the Final Four.
Yeah, when you're the last team into the tourney. All right, well, we're not going to do college hoops talk, though. We're here for NBA, I realize, at an early time, and we're going to dive into everything that this 8-game slate has to cover. As usual, get your questions in with the hashtag DKLIVE on Twitter. You can also use Facebook Live, YouTube, whatever, in the comments section. Just get them there. We'll see the questions, and we'll help you out before we're out of time. But again, 8-game slate beginning 7 o'clock Eastern with the rolling Raptors at the Cavs. Sixers home against the Grizzlies. Those are the first couple games of the night. We'll show you the slate so you can get a full grasp of everything that is going on. Some interesting matchups, too, because you got that Toronto-Cleveland game. It's projected to produce nearly 230 points. You can see it right there. Charlotte and Brooklyn not far behind. Milwaukee and the LA Clippers in that same neighborhood, too. Tons of offense available for you, but you got to choose wisely. So, Matt, you could start us off here. Which game do you like of this mix?
Yeah, I mean, I like the Raptors-Cavs matchup. If for no other reason, you mentioned the high point total, but also Toronto blew the Cleveland Cavaliers out by 34 the first time they played this season. So as Cleveland gets Kevin Love back in the groove here, LeBron keeps doing his thing. I like a high-scoring, competitive matchup between two of the top teams in the East.
And as LeBron, I mean, Larry Drew runs the bench, obviously. Jules.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the most intriguing game. And, I mean, the second part, aside from the high score that makes me interested in it, is, as we'll touch on later in the show, that this is where the most injury questions on this slate lie. So as the day rolls on, we get an answer to who's in, who's out. There might be some really nice value, specifically on the Toronto side. But the other game there that catches my eye is that Clippers-Bucks game, projected as the second highest scoring game on the slate. The Bucks, not usually a team that are in that type of game in terms of being so high scoring. So that gives some interest kind of in those Bucks guys, maybe a little bit faster pace. And then the Clippers obviously have had some of the better values in DFS lately, so that's another game that catches my eye.
Even outside of fantasy, I'm just interested in good basketball down the stretch of the regular season. We should have that tonight with the Raptors and Cavs. Pretty important game, especially for Cleveland, as fighting for seeding. Raptors, they're locked into that one. Nothing's going to happen there. Celtics aren't going to catch them. But still, you want to make sure that you're going over your various personnel matchups and just putting yourself in the best position to be successful. And, of course, the injury concerns for the Cavs relevant as well. And then a little bit later on, you got some better games that, teams that are in playoff positions that could be postseason previews, potentially. Waged in seeding battles, if you will. There's the Pacers in their contest against the Pelicans. The Spurs are home against the Wizards. So just more games that we'll be taking a look at as the show and the night move along. But, again, get your questions in for tonight's slate. Once again, Facebook Live, YouTube, wherever. We'll see it. Just avoid the smoke signals. Narratives. All right, here's the deal, because we're here with you early in an afternoon, and you may just be starting to think about building your lineup. And so you need to know where to attack things. When you have that many points, that many games, that many studs to choose from, what are the chief things that are important to you? The number one thing that you might be thinking about as it concerns starting your lineup. So one narrative just to get us going from each guy, a little bit of reaction as well. Julian, start us off.
Yeah, well, as you guys know, if you watched Monday's show or played DFS on Monday night, Tariq Evans was the big story of the night, being a late scratch after lock and not being designated on that injury report. So this is just another reminder that if you're going to roster players on tanking teams, and the tanking teams on tonight's slate are the Memphis Grizzlies, the New York Knicks, and the third one's the Chicago Bulls. So if you're going to be rostering players from those teams, I'm not saying that it's not safe to do so, and it's nice that the Bulls already went ahead and ruled out Lauri Markkanen, Chris Dunn, and Zach LaVine to help us out there. But if you're going to be between a couple of guys, like, for example, I was between LaMarcus Aldridge and Tariq Evans for my flex spot on Monday night, it's safer to go with that guy like LaMarcus Saul as long as, LaMarcus Gasol. LaMarcus Aldridge. There's a guy on Twitter that has that Twitter handle. And
LaMarcus Gasol? I like it. Yeah, that's
if you're going to go with a guy like LaMarcus Aldridge, it's just a little bit safer. If you think that there's a big discrepancy in play, you like one guy a lot more that's on one of those tanking teams, sure, go with them. They're probably the better play. But if you're really close, at some point you have to determine this factor because these teams are tanking hard this season. There's a tanking flu going around the NBA. A lot of guys sitting out.
Yeah, and Tankathon's having a great time with it. In fact, you've got, obviously, Edlow here mentioned 3 of the teams. You got 4 teams all told that have already been eliminated from playoff contention that are on this slate tonight. Whether they're all tanking or not, I guess you can make that debate. But,
true.
You know, Dags, Julian and I have this discussion all the time about the tanking teams and whether or not you want to go anywhere near these clubs on these slates, especially when there's that blowout potential. How do you feel about it?
You know, it's really hard. I will try and find some guys, 1 or 2 guys on each team that I think regardless of what they're doing, this guy's going to produce. On a team like New York, maybe it's Tim Hardaway Jr. at this point. He's starting to hit his groove in terms of scoring consistently, whereas a guy like Michael Beasley has fallen off a little bit in the last couple of weeks. Generally, you want to try and see, you know, who's going to be my consistent guy, and then maybe is there a guy there that's maybe underpriced or hasn't been seeing minutes much as of late, so you can get a little more value out of him now that he's getting a few extra minutes every time.
All right, let's get to your first narrative. What do you have for us?
Yeah, one of those tanking teams Julian mentioned, the Knicks, who I was just speaking of a second ago. They're playing against Miami, and the Heat battling for one of the last playoff spots in the East. They're going for it. Might be tempting to roster a couple of Miami players, but we're looking at a team that just came off a double overtime game on Monday against the Denver Nuggets, and they were only playing 9 guys to start that game. Anyway, no Hassan Whiteside, no Dwayne Wade. Looks like those guys will be out again. So with a short roster and a lengthy game just 2 nights ago, I wouldn't be so sure to roster any of those Heat players here tonight against the Knicks. It looks tempting, but I would maybe steer clear of Miami and what be maybe a tired roster at this point.
Will you take your fantasy talents to South Beach here, Julian, or are you going to stay away as well?
For the most part, this is a really tough game to roster guys in. In fact, there's a couple of Knicks that I do like more than Miami players, and that double overtime game does have a lot to do with it. So, yeah, I think if I was to play somebody on Miami tonight, it would probably be someone like Bam Adebayo. Younger, he's a big guy that he's going to throw. They're going to need his size against some of the Knicks bigs that they're going to throw out there. So that would be the Heat that I would, the Heat member that I would play if I had to, but I don't mind fading that team at all after what they went through in their last game.
All right, next narrative for you.
Yeah, so LeBron, is it a LeBron night? Always a big topic.
Usually
here
is,
on
right?
Lock. So he scored 70 DraftKings points in 4 straight games.
Which is absurd.
Which is absurd, and he's going back to, I think it's like February 6th, where he scored 50 or more straight. I don't even know how many games that is at this point.
I think it's 18 now.
So he has been as consistent as you can really ever ask for on a fantasy player. So my narrative here is don't chase him in GPPs. You don't need to play LeBron tonight in tournaments going up against the Toronto Raptors. I think the 70 streak ends tonight. However, if you're playing cash games, I don't think that the longer 50 DK point streak does end tonight. So I think he's safe if you're playing cash games. You need somewhere to spend up. This isn't a great slate in terms of a lot of, home run anchors, although there are some in better spots than LeBron. So I think you can still get him into your cash game lineups, but you don't need to go chasing after him in GPPs tonight. You can go a little bit more balanced with a couple of the anchors that Matt and I are going to talk about a little later.
So, Dax, I won't go so far as to say Julian is sitting here advocating fading LeBron. He's just saying don't chase him. But what is your perspective here? Because it seems like he's a guy that you have to chase every single night with the way that he's been playing the last, as Julian said, month and a half or so.
Yeah, you would think so. I mean, and you're not going to go wrong if you take LeBron. It just kind of depends on how many other guys are going to be taking LeBron tonight. And do you want to try something different should he, we'll call it stumble, and maybe only get you only 50 fantasy points tonight. But I agree with Julian. I don't think you really need to go out and chase after him tonight. I'm more intrigued by the lesser guys on Cleveland's roster, with Kyle Korver being out, the death of his brother, certainly not what you want to see happen. But guys are going to have to step up. You've got George Hill, who may play a little bit more at the 2 spot, or maybe they go back to J.R. Smith and try to give him another chance. He's pretty cheap on tonight's slate. Somebody's going to have to fill the void, or maybe does Rodney Hood, who's kind of questionable right now, does he get back into the lineup? And then on the other side, Toronto's got some injury issues of their own. Is DeMar DeRozan going to play tonight? We're not quite sure yet. And is Fred VanVleet going to play? DeLon Wright has been very good filling in as of late, getting big minutes and production to match. And he may be able to see some more time, or is it a Norman Powell or somebody like that for Toronto?
Next narrative for you, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's those guys. If you're looking for the value in that Cleveland-Toronto game and don't want to take LeBron, where do you go? Who do you pick? You got to pick the right one. For me, I like DeLon Wright, who's been pretty darn good getting those minutes for you, and he's been able to get 32 a game in the last 3 in terms of fantasy points. Just $4,700 for me. He's the guy I like, especially if VanVleet's out.
All right, well, just to go over some of those ins and outs here, as far as ins, we don't quite know. We'll find that out, obviously, a little bit closer to lineup lock. And as always, I encourage you, download the DKLIVE app because you will get the latest updates with the push notifications. Whatever you need to know concerning lineup notes, those will hit you as they happen. Our team is wildly on top of things, so nothing goes missed. As far as guys who have already been ruled out, though, Hassan Whiteside, Dwayne Wade, Chris Dunn, Zach LaVine, Lauri Markkanen, Gary Harris, Larry Nance Jr., Domantas Sabonis, Kyle Korver, Jetty Osman, some of the names that we already mentioned. Other lineup notes, probable, Andrew Harrison, Tyler Zeller, Emmanuel Mudiay at the moment, questionable, DeMar DeRozan, Drew Holiday, Marc Gasol, Fred VanVleet, Rodney Hood, Tristan Thompson, Antonio Blakely, Dante Cunningham, Cody Zeller, Ivan Rabb, Jody Meeks, Mike Scott, and doubtful Nick Batum. So clearly a long list of questionables. It's not normally like that when we have the later shows. I recognize that, but there is a reason for it, obviously, and that is just the fact that, hey, it's 2 in the afternoon East Coast time, and so it's going to be quite a few hours before we find out exactly, pardon me, who is in and who is out. One thing, though, to make note of, for whatever reason, I don't entirely know why, a lot of these team Twitter accounts keep, just in the last few minutes, they keep tweeting out, our game is on tonight, despite
Philly
the
and
rain.
Brooklyn.
Teams that are in the Northeast, because I know there's some bad weather coming in, but nothing that should even remotely threaten these games. So you probably,
that's what the teams say.
Correct me if I'm wrong. You tell me. Should anyone steer clear of rostering guys that are on these teams?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing worse than an NBA game getting canceled. It's extremely rare, and it's extremely frustrating in a DFS sense. But everything we're hearing from the teams, which is what we have to go on, is that these games are going to be on. So all we can do is follow the news. We'll have it all for you on DK Live, but these teams are coming out early and saying we are playing these games.
Okay, let's go to our questions again. Get them in with the hashtag DKLive on Twitter. You also have Facebook Live, YouTube, wherever you can find it. First one comes from Jonathan here. It's Jamal Murray or Myles Turner. What do you think? Dax, take this first one.
I'll go Myles Turner with Indiana. Going up against New Orleans, 2 teams that aren't really want to play a whole lot of defense. I like using some viable centers against New Orleans, especially now that DeMarcus Cousins is out. So Myles Turner, a guy who's starting to round into form a little bit later than Indiana would have liked after he missed so much time early in the year. But he's been able to get you 20 points here and there and go around with Victor Oladipo as a nice 1-2 punch for the Pacers. So I'll take Myles Turner instead of Jamal Murray.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree and lean Myles Turner there, but just slightly. So just to play devil's advocate and go with Jamal Murray here. Yes, Murray is coming off that same double OT game that the Heat played in, so he's coming off 43 minutes, so maybe he's a little tired. But maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that makes, because they're going up against the Chicago Bulls, who stink. So maybe Denver's tired, this game is closer than it should be with Chicago, and Jamal Murray has to produce to actually keep his team in it. So Jamal Murray also not in a bad spot himself.
All right, Julian, next one here comes from Robbie, who wants to know about Cameron Payne.
Campaign. He's been pretty good lately. I'm not sure what his salary is tonight, but I think overall he's been in a good spot. It's sticking with that Denver team, so maybe they're a little tired. Jamal Murray playing more offense than he is defense with the tired legs, so I don't mind Campaign on this slate.
Dax, you going to start a campaign tonight or what?
You know, as much as he is on my beloved Bulls, you know, at 5,300, I think he's getting to that point where maybe the production is kind of leveling off with his salary. I don't think he's such a great bargain anymore in terms of salary. But, you know, even with, you know, Denver coming off of 2 overtimes, I don't see this game being all that close. With all the guys Chicago has out, I'm not sure how many minutes some of these guys will get. So, you know, we mentioned Jamal Murray. I don't know. You know, Campaign could be in a little bit of a timeshare. I'd say you're not going to lose value on him, but I don't think he's a great value at 5,300 tonight.
Why don't we stay with your beloved Bulls then, Dags, because our pal Adam wants to know, with the high projected point total, do you see any value for Chicago?
The one guy that I'm looking at is Cristiano Felicio, a guy who's kind of getting his minutes back in here lately. He's played at least 30 minutes in 3 of the last 4 games for Chicago. So as they sit guys like Robin Lopez and other guys that are in that front court, Felicio at 3,800 looks like a good value for the Bulls. That'd be the one guy that I look at to maybe roster with all the guys out for Chicago. Yeah,
I mean, Felicio's the guy there. He's somebody that I'm going to talk about in value later. But Campaign, I didn't know his salary before. It does go up a little bit. That makes me like him a little less, but a solid play, I think, there. And then Noah Vonleh was a guy that if Lauri Markkanen came back, we were going to have to start fading, but he's still cheap, just over 4,000. He hasn't really shown, it would be nice if he showed like a 30-point ceiling, but he's been really consistent in getting in the low 20s, which is a little bit further than exceeding value. So Vonleh is a guy that you can also consider there.
All right, we'll do more questions later on. Keep getting them in. Hashtag DKLIVE. You see it right there on the screen. You can also use Facebook Live and YouTube in the comments section. We will see them. We will type them up nice and fancy on your screens and then answer your questions as well. We're full service around here. Anchors. All right, 5 most expensive plays on the slate. Ordinarily, we don't do it that way, but in this case and in a couple of recent cases, actually, these are just the top plays. I mean, it's not just salary. These guys are in great spots against favorable matchups, or maybe injuries have factored in for minutes, whatever it may be. So we begin right there at the top. LeBron James, 11,700. As Julian talked about earlier, he has been stupid good lately. At least 70 fantasy points in 4 straight, 50 plus his last 18. Just 1 meeting with the Raps this year, and they held him in the 30s. Just something to think about anyway. Anthony Davis, 11,500, cleared 50 points his last 2. He's dealing with a back-to-back, though, after facing the Mavs last night. Tonight, Pelicans will host the Pacers. He torched Indy for 69 points in November. Giannis Antetokounmpo, 11,100, at least 60 fantasy points in 3 in a row, 50-plus in 7 of 9, facing the Clippers tonight for the first time this year. Joel Embiid, you can actually pay down $2,000 versus the King, and he has hit at least 50 fantasy points each of his last 4 games, matching up with the Grizzlies. But again, Memphis limited him to 33 in one previous meeting earlier this season. And Nick Jokic, 9,600, so just behind him in salary. His last 3 outings have produced 60, 49, and 70 fantasy points if you want to round up a half point on each one. In Chicago tonight, only 19 points against the Bulls a few months ago. I'd have to go back and look at that one to see if he got hurt or something like that, or maybe just had a terrible game. But either way, that is our group of 5 as far as guys who seemingly are in great positions tonight. You really can't go wrong with any of them. However, as Julian talked about, as it concerns LeBron, there are some tournaments maybe you want to go with a guy, and maybe in some cases you don't want to, based on ownership or whatever it may be. So we find out from these guys. Jules, you could start us off. Who is your top anchor play tonight?
Yeah, so normally I've been going LeBron pretty much every show, and that's been working out. Not that that's a real hot take right there or anything. But, I mean, tonight I mentioned go with LeBron in cash. I don't think you need him in tournaments. Giannis has been playing really well. The Clippers, on the second night of a back-to-back, got smoked by Karl Anthony Towns and Jeff Teague last night. So I like Giannis over LeBron. But my anchor is Joel Embiid, who still, for some reason, has not surpassed 10K in salary. He had been at 9,500 for a while. He went up to 9,700. But he scored between 52 and 62 DK points in each of his last 4 games. He's going up against that Memphis tanking team tonight. I don't care if Marc Gasol plays or not. Nobody on that team can cover Joel Embiid. So I really like the spot for Embiid. He's played some tanking teams in his recent stretch of good games and still performed well in those games, still gotten minutes in those games. So I'm not really afraid of anything with Joel Embiid tonight in terms of rostering him. I think he's safe in all formats and a great candidate to exceed value.
Dags, I'll ask the question that I feel like I always ask as it concerns some of the situations that Julian was just talking about, and knowing full well what he just said about the fact that Embiid is even still performing in some of these tanking matchups, but the fact that against Memphis, they blow out there basically trying to lose. If this turns into a blowout, we won't necessarily see those same minutes from Embiid. So would you roster him tonight?
I don't think he's a bad play by any stretch, but I like what Julian's doing, kind of saving some salary on some of the top guys like LeBron and Giannis and AD. But I'm going to go with the last guy on the list you provided there, Nikola Jokic. I'll save an extra $100 going down from Embiid. And like Embiid, they're playing against the tanking team in Chicago. However, I feel like this is a good opportunity for Denver to kind of pick on the Bulls a little bit here and achieve some good fantasy numbers. You mentioned the numbers he's gotten in the last 3 for Jokic. He's averaging almost 25 points and 13 rebounds in those last 3 games. And I don't see anybody out there who's going to stop them. So for guys like Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic, and even Will Barton, who's filling in now with Gary Harris out, I like what Jokic can do. Even if this is a blowout game, I feel like Jokic and the rest of the Nuggets can still get their numbers in 3 quarters that maybe Embiid may have a harder time if it's a blowout against Memphis.
I mean, I'll say this for Jokic. He got a triple-double in 14.5 minutes earlier this season. So playing against a really poor team, he's definitely a great tournament play in terms of if he plays 25 minutes, he can put up 60 DK points. So you are safe in that blowout fashion. And if it becomes a good game and Jokic gets his full amount of minutes, he has an even higher ceiling.
Well, we do have some news as it relates to that game. Tyreke Evans, you can see our alert right there. He is not going to play in this game today. So I'm not going to say this, wrecks the slate or anything like that. It probably doesn't turn your lineup upside down, but there is a relevance, obviously. So, Julian, I'll go right back to you here with this one. The fact that he's not going to play, how does that impact the fact that this team already sucks and is already tanking and maybe more blowout potential? And also, do you see anybody on that Memphis side that can provide a spark, can provide some value?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I think the whole DFS community is saying thank you to the Memphis Grizzlies. Everybody felt like they really got the short end of the stick on Monday night, and now the Grizzlies have come out 4.5 hours before lock, whatever it is, and told us Tyreke Evans is out. So they did this with Marc Gasol on Monday, though, and so hopefully we'll get the Marc Gasol news because he's still questionable as well. But in terms of plays for this slate, that probably means Andrew Harrison, who's getting a little too expensive, but he should get the start. Mario Chalmers is in play. We'll see what else their injury report looks like. Even guys like JaMychal Green is probably in a better spot without Tyreke Evans' usage, being a really good spot if Marc Gasol wound up out. Without Gasol and Evans on Monday, Green approached 50 DK points. So Tyreke Evans out definitely opens up a source of value on the Grizzlies, particularly in the backcourt, though.
Dags, you like that value?
Yeah, I don't think it's bad. I think the one guy that kind of stands out for me in that game isn't even Embiid even. I like Ben Simmons, a guy who's just kind of seemingly in control of everything at this point. 3 triple-doubles in the last 4 games, and a guy who, what did he have, 15 assists and no turnovers last time out? Just ridiculous stuff. He seems like he is poised and ready to go, and again, against a Memphis team that doesn't have much to write home about. I like his value even more as he creeps in just under that list we looked at of the top studs of the night.
I tell you, what he's doing this year, everybody should think about skipping their first year in the NBA and just sitting out. Oh, wait, no, he'd be a sophomore. Yeah, he'd be a sophomore, actually. And
he only played 30-something or 40-something games last year, I think.
Yeah, no, that's true. Last year he didn't play. Period. No, right?
He played. He
Did
played
he?
Last season.
Last year?
I thought he should have been the Rookie of the Year, playing like half the games of the season.
Not last year.
Last year? I don't know.
Dax, correct me on this.
Julian, are you talking Embiid or Ben Simmons?
No, I'm talking about Simmons. I'm not talking about Embiid.
Oh, my bad. I was talking about Embiid. Sorry. Yeah, this is Simmons Rookie Year. My fault.
I mean, quote-unquote rookie year.
All right. Well, the reason I blew that is because I was just confirming some stuff with the Grizzlies. I mentioned Andrew Harrison. He is still on the injury report. He's only probable with a wrist injury. The Grizzlies are a freaking mess. But let's see who plays and who doesn't play, and we'll get you on DK Live on Twitter. We'll get you these value plays before lock.
All right, speaking of value now, typically we run down our top 5 just like the anchor segment, but again, since it's so early in the day, lineup changes in the last hour or two are going to impact those. We don't want to steer you in the wrong directions. That said, we're not going to run down a whole handful, but there are some obvious ones regardless of what happens between now and lock. So each of these guys, they're going to give me their number 1 value at this moment. Again, at this moment. I can't stress that enough because who knows what's going to happen in the next, 4.5 hours. But right now, Matt, go ahead. You can give us your first one. Number 1 value play tonight.
Yeah, in terms of salary, it's not a cheap salary like we're used to seeing for some of these value plays, but give me Kevin Love. Anytime I can get a superstar player, whether he's just coming back from injury or not, anytime I can get him at 6,400, I'm going to take that chance. I'm going to roll the dice on that and see what happens. He did pretty well in his first game back. He goes for 18 and 7 on Monday in just 25 minutes. So maybe his minutes are a little bit more here in game 2, maybe against a superior opponent compared to the last one, and them taking on the Raptors. I just like anytime I can get a superstar for maybe $2,000 under what his real value would be. I'm going to take that chance and see what happens. So I'll take Kevin Love at 6,400.
Yeah, I mean, I love the value on Kevin Love. He only played 25 minutes in his first game back, but he produced. Let's say he gets 28, 30 minutes tonight, sees a little bit more action. He's still way too cheap, and you have Kyle Korver out there, so maybe Kevin Love getting up some more three-pointers on those assists from LeBron. But the guy that jumped out to me was Cristiano Felicio, a guy that we talked about earlier in the show. He's going up against the Denver Nuggets. Nikola Jokic probably takes care of him very handily on one side of the ball, but they need Felicio's size out there, so he's going to get the minutes. And he was a guy that was a value play kind of earlier in the year once the Bulls started resting Robin Lopez a lot, and Felicio really underperformed in some games. But here, if you look at his game log in his last 2 games, 25 and 27 DK points. He played 30 minutes in both of those games, so when he's on the floor getting those shots, he performs pretty well, and Lauri Markkanen's still going to be out. So I like Felicio as a guy. You're going to need a guy under 4K on this slate, and he fits that bill. So I think Felicio, a really nice play. You can play him with Love very easily if you want.
Some other guys, in addition to many of the ones that we've been rattling off as it is, there's Markieff Morris, John Henson, Kyle O'Quinn, a few other guys that are in good spots, priced right around $5,000. So again, just something to think about. And to that end, let's get back to some questions and filter in whatever you have because we'll be with you for another 5-10 minutes. Just get those questions in. This next one comes from Diane. Need some decent bargain basement options to offset the huge price of the hot players. So Dags, why don't you pick right up with that? Who are some other value guys you like?
Yeah, the one guy that you just mentioned, Kyle O'Quinn, a guy who's been steadily producing again for New York. You see so many of these guys kind of seesaw their way through, but he's been able to produce with not a ton of minutes, 18, 20 minutes a night, but he is a per-minute monster at 4,700 against this Miami team that may be a little bit sluggish and a little bit shorthanded with no Hassan Whiteside. I think Kyle O'Quinn at 4,700 is a pretty good play.
Yeah, like Kyle O'Quinn, Felicio I just mentioned. Jeff Green with Osman and Korver out in Cleveland. Jeff Green might get some extra run there, so I don't mind Jeff Green. Marvin Williams, another guy. Nick Batum doubtful, assuming that Nick Batum is out. Marvin Williams, $4,000 going up against the Brooklyn Nets. So hopefully in that handful of guys, that helps you out there.
Next question from Brett. These are my favorite types of questions because it makes our guys pull out the crystal balls. All right, name two guys under $5,000 that put up 40-plus DK points tonight. You can go first. You can. You don't have to give me two. You can give me one. I'll take one from each of you. That's okay.
You want two guys that are going to go 8 or more times value on this slate. If we were getting this question right every night, everybody watching Pre-Lock Live would be winning. Let's see. That's a really hard question. I like Marvin Williams a lot. Jeremy Lamb is 5,400. That's got to be close enough for you. He's a guy that has 40 DK point potential.
May not have that $400 to spare, man. Stay under $5,000. Answer the question.
This is a trick question. This is tough.
Not a trick. Someone's going to do it, probably.
Someone literally might not do it, but I'll give you Jeremy Lamb at 5,400. I'm not kidding. That doesn't happen on every slate. Jeremy Lamb at 5,400. Please tell me that's close enough. He's a guy with a 40 DK point upside ceiling.
Dags, would you like to actually answer the question?
I will. I don't know that I have a great answer for it, but of guys that are under 5,000 that we haven't even talked about yet, the one guy I could see who has superstar-like games in him every now and then maybe Jabari Parker at 4,500, a decent matchup against the Clippers. Both teams fighting for their playoff lives at this point. So they're going to have their guys in there, and they're going to be playing. And I see it being a competitive game. So Jabari Parker, every now and then he can come out with 20 to 25 points as he still kind of works his way back into this Milwaukee lineup. But a guy who wouldn't be surprising if you see him in the $5,000 to $6,000 range on some of these nights. But at 4,500, maybe you take a flyer on him.
Look, I get that it's not easy to. I mean, look, we got to be bold here, right? We got to be.
Want me to answer the question?
I was ready to disqualify you. So I want you to be bold.
2 guys under 5,000.
Now you're going to give me 2. You're going to show off.
You told me to answer the question.
No, please.
2 guys under 5,000. Kyle O'Quinn, Jeff Green. Play him.
See? Is that so tough?
Next question.
I mean, you already mentioned both guys at some point in the show.
I'll already tell you. You can tweet me when I'm wrong. That's not going to be right.
There's
my answer.
All right. I would probably not listen to him on this particular question then, given the level of confidence.
That's like MLB season's almost here. Like, give me the 2 guys under $3,000 that are going to hit 5 home runs tonight.
Well, maybe you didn't used to watch MLB Pre-Lock Live, but we would do our home run pick segment. Who's going to pick a home run?
I can call one player in the whole slate that's going to hit a home run. I can't name 2 players that are under $3,000 that are going to hit 4 home runs.
Under $5,000.
Well, $5,000 in baseball is a lot. The salaries are different. That would be the equivalent of saying, give me a guy under $3,000 that's going to hit multiple home runs.
I think you're selling yourself short. I want your confidence to be a little bit higher at returning 8 times value.
Kyle O'Quinn, Jeff Green.
I hope Dags nails it. I hope he nails it.
Jabari Parker's going on.
Daddy to quit fighting here. That's all I want. I just want a little less bickering here.
It's what we do so well, though. All
right,
right,
spend a long time with each other. It's very apparent.
The bad weather's coming. Nobody wants to walk in the snow. All right, from Luke. Next question comes from Luke here, and that is thought on Darren Collison coming back and actually playing well, Dax.
I think he's great for offensive purposes. I saw a stat a week or 2 ago when he came back that Indiana's defense was about 10 points per 100 possessions better with Corey Joseph on the floor than Darren Collison. So I think he's good in a game like this against New Orleans, especially if Drew Holiday is out for the Pelicans. But don't expect too much from on the defensive end of things. He's going to make or break your lineup based on his offensive numbers, which in tonight's spot, he could be in for a decent night.
Felix?
Yeah, I like Darren Collison a lot, actually, going up against the team that drafted him. Here's the thing. Darren Collison coming back from injury, he came off the bench his first 5 games. On Monday's slate, he got thrusted back into the starting lineup, played 33 minutes, scored 37 DraftKings points. So yes, his salary's up $700 since then, so it reflects the new role change. But the Pelicans, terrible defensively in the backcourt. I really like this spot for Darren Collison.
Okay, next one from a friend of the show, Samir, who's usually the one actually typing these questions, but he's not with us today. Thoughts on Oladipo tonight?
I like Oladipo. You have to pay up for him at 8,200, so I would prefer some of the guys on our anchor list there who are a little bit more. I would go with Darren Collison, who's 5,500 as a play over Oladipo and spend that cash elsewhere. If Darren Collison had been under 5,000, maybe I could predict him for 40 DraftKings points, but he's just too much money.
Dax?
Way to stick by the rules this time.
Yep, gotta play by the rules.
At 8,200, Oladipo for me hasn't been scoring enough like he had been maybe a month or so ago. He was routinely in the upper 20s, low 30s in terms of actual points scored, but he's been kind of lower. He's been in that 20-point range over the last few. If I'm going to spend that kind of money and I can make it work for my lineup, I actually like LaMarcus Aldridge at 8,800 a little bit better. This guy's been tearing it up lately, especially against the Warriors the other night. But 36 and 11 are his averages in the last 2 games. If I'm going to spend that kind of money, I'd rather go with LaMarcus Aldridge over Victor Oladipo.
Okay, last question here from Josh, and that is thoughts on Briante Weber. Briante Weber as a cheap punt.
I like it. We're getting the Grizzlies news. Tariq Evans out. Weber played 34 minutes on Monday night, scored 26.5 DraftKings points. Should be in a very similar situation on this slate, so I like him.
Just a few games under his belt for Memphis so far. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I love his hair as a guy who has. He's certainly gotten me going on that. I saw him play in Summer League, actually, in Orlando. He's a great team guy, always a rah-rah guy, whether he's in the game or not. Defensive intensity, a real good player, but that doesn't get you any fantasy points. I don't know about going that far out on a punt play for him, but
Well, he just got the fantasy points though in his last game, 26.5 fantasy points at $3,000. That's around 8 times value.
Weird.
The number that we're looking for 2 $5,000 guys on tonight's slate.
Yeah, play him, obviously. Hey, bonus question. Can you name, Dags, how many NBA teams Weber has played on so far in his career?
Yikes.
You don't have to name the teams. Just give me a number of them.
I'm going to say 5.
5? Dead on. Dead on. Yeah. He's been with Charlotte, Houston, Memphis, Golden State, and Miami.
Did we plow that one?
He'd been around that long.
Could you have done that?
Nut
5
category?
I could have guessed a number.
5. Yeah, I know numbers between 1 and whatever.
We've been spending the last couple questions guessing numbers pretty much.
Pretty much, yeah. Look, and some of when it comes to saying who's going to have 8 times value tonight, yes, there is a degree of luck that comes into play with that, obviously. But it is an element of educated strategy that goes into calculating whether or not a guy is even in a position to do so. And then from there, much like predicting a home run, you're hoping.
I mean, yeah, I don't know what to say about that question. But on the Weber question, had we gotten that Grizzlies news, he probably would have been a guy that would have made the values list. Or we didn't even do the values list on this show, but he would have been up on the values graphic on a normal show had we gotten that news before. So he is actually a guy that's in a really good spot for his salary.
All right, one more time lineup notes here again. Tyreek Evans is out, so is Hassan Whiteside, Dwayne Wade, Chris Dunn, Zach LaVine, Lauri Markkanen, Gary Harris, Larry Nance Jr., DeMontis Sabonis, Kyle Korver, and Jetty Osman. His name is just, it's spelled nothing like it's pronounced, by the way. Probable: Andrew Harrison, Tyler Zeller, Emmanuel Mudiay. Questionable: DeMar DeRozan, Drew Holiday, Marc Gasol, Fred VanVleet, Rodney Hood, Tristan Thompson, Antonio Blakely, Dante Cunningham, Cody Zeller, Ivan Rabb, Jody Meeks, and Mike Scott. Doubtful: Nicholas Batum. So final thoughts. Let's start with you, Dax. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think you need to roster any of the big salary guys, the guys over 11,000, LeBron, AD, and Giannis tonight. I think you can play it safe and get some more value and spend more in other places and go with the guys like we talked about tonight. Jokic, Embiid, Ben Simmons, LaMarcus Aldridge. I think you'll get plenty of production out of those guys while saving a little bit more. And I would say, a good play would also be pick on the Chicago Bulls a little bit tonight. Roster Jokic, roster Will Barton, who went for 40-plus fantasy points the last time out. Go for Jamal Murray. I think those guys will get their value despite maybe a blowout game where they only play 3 quarters. I think there's good value there on the Denver side of that equation.
Julian?
My final thoughts will be the same final thoughts that they are every time we do an early pre-lock live, and that's make sure that you look at DKLIVE until lineups lock. We've still got DeMar DeRozan questionable. We still have Drew Holiday questionable. We still have Marc Gasol questionable. Those are 3 huge names that could potentially open up a lot of value on this slate. And then there's the unknown. Is somebody else going to jump onto the injury report in the last few hours before lock? So download DKLIVE if you don't already have it. Follow the news on there, and we will get you the status on all these guys and the value plays that coincide with them.
Or hell, maybe a game will be canceled.
Let's hope not. That's always a problem.
Yeah, probably not. All right, so here's the deal. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, that's when you find NBA Pre-Lock Live. Friday, we're going to be back with you, as always, except it's going to be early, just like today. In fact, I think even a smidge earlier. I think we're targeting a 1:30 show on Friday. Is this news to you as you
Learn
look at me?
something new every day.
You see that? We'll fill him in the production meeting after. But pay attention because we got some big things, big doings coming with Pre-Lock Live. It's going to change things a little bit for you, make things more interesting, and I hope, even more informative for you along the way as well. So make sure, I always tell you, go back, rewatch, learn all of that, but in reality, you usually have a very tight window to do that. That is not the case today. Pay attention to DK Live, like Julian said, download the app, get those push notifications with all the alerts about lineup notes,
read the
all those
articles
big
on the
names.
playbook.
Read the playbook, all of it, absolutely. But on top of that, you can go back with Julian, with Dags, me to a lesser degree. Those questions, the anchors, the value discussion, the narratives, all of it is available for you on this show, Facebook Live, YouTube, on Twitter you can find it. It's out there. It's going to be all the way through lock and beyond. So you can go back, you can look at this thing. You've got, 4 hours to do so. You could watch it like 8 or 9 times or something like that. You could return
Really?
8 times value on this show.
Wow.
That sounds horrible.
I was just going to ask you for your 8 times value guy tonight.
You. You, my friend, you return 8 times value every single show.
That's not a real answer.
Yeah, he didn't buy it. Probably shouldn't. All right, we're gonna get out of here. Dags, you feel good? Show 1?
I do. It was very entertaining, and you guys play nice.
Yeah, we're gonna go hug it out. Thanks to Dags. Thanks to Felix. I'm Kaufman. We'll talk to you soon. Enjoy the day. Good luck tonight.